says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you're lusting is the one you're loving?
Affirmative action bit the dust. Now, I'm not sad.
Yeah.
I feel good. I'm glad these things are happening, because I feel some people have been lulled into a false sense of like, everything's fine. No, everything's not fine. And this was a direct attack on Blackness, because they did not target legacy. They did not target the white women that are the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action, which maybe they still will get targeted, but maybe they could slip in under legacy. I don't know. That was specifically targeting Black people. Your thoughts on this, Seena Ghaznavi?
We're going to have some great legal experts because I have questions. So I haven't gotten a chance to read the opinion. I'm wondering how narrowly tailored it is. What are the ripple effects of this ruling? I've heard you speak on this before that, we don't need it, that it's not a thing.
Let me be clear.
Yeah.
Let me be clear. I believe that you cannot legislate morality or good damn common sense, right? So putting something into law, with the exception of government set-asides for contractors and things like that, which I think a certain percentage of these jobs should go to, because that's wealth building, to people who are Black specifically, right? Much the way, it's interesting. We got the New Deal that excluded Black people through like shady means. So it excluded domestic workers.
Yeah.
Who was cleaning houses, and it was Black people. And then it excluded, this is how nasty FDR was, people who worked on farms, sharecroppers. Who was doing that work? Black people. So the New Deal, which fostered the middle class in this country and built the middle class with handouts, government welfare, for 40 years, excluded Black people until the 70s, right? So you think about the 30 plus years, you think about all of these laws that are supposed to even the playing field, and affirmative action did not specifically say for Black people. So guess who specifically did not benefit from affirmative action? Black people. So in many ways, we felt like we got affirmative action, so everything's equal, but it still made it imbalanced. Anybody that's gone to school in the last couple of decades, there's still Black sections in commons areas where they eat, there's still like Black student unions. There's still like these little tiny pockets of Blackness where people feel safe, because the entirety of these major universities, with the exception of Georgia State, I'm hearing, still very white, bastions of whiteness, right? So you're a person. Go ahead, tell me.
Do you though feel like there's a role for government in closing the gap that was created after decades of social welfare for white people?
I believe all things can work to the good, right? So I believe we should have laws. I feel like we should have government programs. I feel like we should have all of these safety nets. I feel like no one should go hungry or be unhoused in this country. That said, I also feel like when you think that something is there and it's not, you're operating under a false pretense, and it alleviates, I think, the notion that we have to be vigilant. Right. And I feel like we got comfortable and we relaxed. So when affirmative action went into law, I think it was when did it become a law? Officially came to the fore in 1935, the Wagner Act, which was a federal law that gave workers the right to form and join unions. That was the beginning. But I think it really came into play in the 1990s, right? Under the Employment Equality Act. We're going to talk with legal experts in a minute. But I just feel like, when I think about this nation built on a lie and a myth in many ways, denigrating a whole group of people who then also denigrated themselves for so many years internally, right? You internalize a thing that, and this is the pathway to success, right? This is how you get through. I feel like it gives you, it atrophies certain muscles. So maybe this will, help us to engage in these muscles of constant vigilance and constant battling. But yeah, I think there should be a law. But because there's nothing we could do about it now. It's going to give a license to a lot of people to say, I don't have to hire you, or I don't have to let you in my school.
It did in its practice get messy, because class really ends up being a determinative factor when getting into these, especially highly private schools that are super difficult to get into. I think that's like a huge part of this that gets ignored, right? So if there's a kid from South America who got to go to Exeter, which is like a very fancy prep school, they would benefit from affirmative action in applying to Harvard, as opposed to the Asian kid in Queens who comes from a working class, poverty stricken family that his parents or her parents or their parents figured out a way to kind of get them into the right testing, get them prepped and everything like that. They've got all the grades and stuff like that. So in practice, this got really messy, I think, is really how this unraveled after a while. And I think because the intentions of it weren't clear from the beginning, I don't know why we just didn't just say, we've got to close the gap of social welfare that was created for white people and help Black people out in America. But when you do that, that's a race-based law.
Right.
And it's like, you can't have that anymore, even though you had that for a long time.
Right. Which is, we have literally, this country has wrapped a rope around its neck.
Yeah.
Many,
eating the
many
snake
times.
or whatever.
Ouroboros, snake eating his own ass. Like we are, I mean, it's a car crash. It's a bashing of hypocrisy. And I'm here for all of it because it all needs to be dismantled and we should start with fresh soil. I was talking with Dr. Robin yesterday. She said she prays for her seed, her harvest to be destroyed. When you plant bad seeds in the ground, you're going to produce a bad harvest. Pray for the whole harvest to be killed so that you can now till the soil with good seeds. And I feel like that's where we are as a country right now. And it's time to do that. It's time to reimagine what it looks like to be America. And this will help, to your point, it becomes a corner that you put yourself in. All of you out there fighting for reparations, I guarantee that there is going to be a whole lot of white folk claiming Black lineage and heritage. It wouldn't be wrong, because how do you define it? Is it 1/32nd? And if it's 1/32nd Black, that means a great-great-grandparent. A lot of white folk that can claim that in this country. And damn if 23andMe won't help them. I'm just saying, and I'm not so sure if 23andMe wasn't founded just to do that. But I'm saying that what I'd like to see is, for example, when you hire, you hire because people do a certain skill and they also fit into your culture. And for you, your culture is having people from different backgrounds banging up against each other so that you can get the best out of the content. You need the different perspectives, right? And as a teacher in the classroom, I love that I had 2 students from mainland China, a young lady who was Guyanese, another young lady from Harlem. I had a kid that was, spoke only Spanish, comes from a Spanish speaking home where both his parents only speak Spanish. I had Ecuadorian, and, but when we have these conversations around what's going on in the world, I'm getting perspectives that even as a professor, and it makes the classroom so lovely. So why wouldn't you want that, right? When we're talking about philosophy, wouldn't you want to hear it through the lens of somebody that may not be your typical person that would be in a classroom at Harvard?
And how do you get that though now? Because there is no mechanism for an admissions office to say, I want to create a diversity of thought from different cultures. And
so now your hiring of admissions directors has to be keen, right? So if I'm an admissions director, that's easy. I was telling somebody, Urban View is probably the most diverse channel, not on air, behind the scenes. Just my show alone. Amina is Pakistani. I think Lexa's from her family's from Greece. We got Jonah, the intern who's going to be working and doing other things, biracial. I'm just going down the list, and it's not, no one cherry picked. It's like you come in, but the perspectives are great. Stephanie's, white, they're Smiths, Polish and Italian or whatever, but none of it matters. Hi, Smiths, but it doesn't. The point is, you're not picking people based on their background, but you're picking and if you do that, then you're going to have diversity, and they all bring something to the table, and they all can, fill in my blind spots, because I have blind spots as it relates, just because, I've been Black my whole life. That means that, there are things I don't see.
Sure.
And you need the other perspectives to round out who you are and the way you think about things. I feel like it's going to be a lot on these admissions directors to get it right. And then it's just work.
It's diversity of thought. And it's also at these fancy institutions, they'll use so much merit, but they'll also use legacy and pedigree. And that has a lot to do with class. And I think that has become much more instructive, because even if you take a Black person that went to a fancy school, they're still not going to have the same diversity of thought as someone that was working class, that was a person of color.
They may be worse than the white kid that went to Exeter. You know what I'm saying? Because, I'm listening to Gina Yashere, comedian, her book, Cat Candid, and she talks about her mother coming to London and, her whole background. And, when she wanted to do something other than be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, she ended up becoming an engineer.
Yeah.
She was like, she came to her mother for she wanted to do a hobby. She said, what? A hobby? Doing something for fun? No, and it can't. So she said she took home economics and learned how to bake. And her mother said, okay, every Sunday now you're baking for the whole family. Like she was like,
made it work.
Everything I wanted to do that was fun turned into a job. That's immigrant culture, right? Where you have to be of service to your family or community. You got to come back and provide. And I feel like, on many levels, we are, this is going to reveal a lot of things. I'm sad that we've gotten here, but at the same time, I'm always going to look for the cloud, the silver lining, in the cloud. So I feel like there's an opportunity. 866-801-8255. For you, do you feel like you benefited from affirmative action? Did you put Persian down, or what box did you check? Did you check Caucasian? I'm curious, Seena, because you've grown. I'm not going to hold it against you. What did you check?
It was 9/11 was the year I applied to schools, and a lot of my essay was around 9/11 and how I wanted to go into comedy. And my mother and father were both very scared that I did that I wrote about being Iranian, that I wanted to educate people on who we were, and that they did not want me to put on the application Iranian American or Persian.
Wow.
They were like, they're going to look at you negatively. They're not gonna want that.
What did they want you to put?
They were like, we are Aryan. Really, we are first Aryan.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Because we come from the Caucasus.
Because it's Aryan.
It's a weird thing. We're like old. If you go back to ancient
I believe
times,
you, which makes us all really stupid. This whole notion. Yeah, because our hair looks the same today.
Yeah. That's so
got the same hair.
Crazy. And I remember understanding then, one, a lot of immigrants, when they come to this country, they are obsessed with the security of their family. And when they see threats of security, like what happened to people like myself after 9/11, or other people that got a lot worse, that's something that they're going to want to avoid at all costs possible. And a lot of people choose assimilation. And assimilation isn't the right path. It actually leads to more harm. It leads to more public harm. The ripple effects are worse. And luckily, the one thing that came out of 9/11 was I realized that assimilation was bad. It was going to be really bad for me. And that just by the classic thing that my parents would say, just ignore them. They are stupid. I'm like, okay, well, you can't just ignore them. I mean, you can't, they're right there. They're right in front of your face. I got to exist in this life. I can't just ignore everybody that says anything, So I put it down. I don't know if it helped or not. I got into University of Texas, so I feel like they maybe wanted a couple Persians in their class. But yeah, I mean, I think the affirmative action, I understand how this court did it. I want to read the opinion, but I can't wait to ask a bunch of questions from the legal experts that we have on today and what could happen afterwards.
And we're definitely going to get to that. I just want to, I feel like most of us might feel like we benefited from affirmative action. And Clarence Thomas is getting a lot of smoke, as he should. He got a lot of smoke from both Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Sotomayor gave him all the smoke. But even all of these dissents, and you have to put them in record. You gotta write the thing so that we all know. Didn't change any minds. But I just find it interesting. A man that was literally the head of the equal opportunities, like that was his job to make sure, who literally benefited from affirmative action, would never be on the Supreme Court if not for affirmative action, was the biggest detractor from it. It's fascinating to me. And he feels like in his mind, he was doing something for Black people. I think he felt like he was trying to, free us from something. But what is your understanding of affirmative action, and how do you feel like it's played out, Seena?
My understanding is that it was a factor. There's a lot of factors. We did on Fraudsters last season, we did a whole thing on the college admission scandal and how a lot of wealthy parents who paid hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to get their kids into USC, to get their kids into Harvard, the back door, they called it, right? There is the higher education system is riddled with scam. It is riddled with class issues that impact how kids get into school. So the problem that I have is that, one, it doesn't tackle legacy. Affirmative action was just a factor that these schools were able to use to create that diverse kind of a group, because you have to counteract the capitalistic fraud that happens with higher education. There is no other mechanism now for a school to use that as a factor. And so I think what you could end up is whitewashing of Ivy Leagues and other schools if they are solely going to be merit-based, based on your pedigree, based on legacy, based on where you went to high school, based on your SAT scores. And here's the other thing. A lot of kids that come from maybe disadvantaged areas don't have the extra time to do extracurriculars, to do volunteer work, to go be in a lab their summer going into senior year and studying about the cure for cancer. Those are things that kids that go to Ivy's,
it's a privilege, right?
They put it on there.
Right.
And so that's a factor for them.
Now, is there a way, because again, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. Is there a way for colleges to get creative instead of, they've removed the SAT now as a factor, right? Yeah. A lot of them have eliminated that. What if, geography or zip code instead of race, right? There's a way to do anything if you really want to do it. And this is my point, right? It does not benefit Harvard to be all rich white people and Asians. Doesn't benefit them. It doesn't make their college dope. As a matter of fact, I think it undermines it. So it would be not in their best interest. And it also doesn't benefit them to have rich Black people. A whole Jack and Jill set. You really want to have the kind of discourse in a college classroom as a person that's taught for 25 years that enlightens everyone. I can't tell you how much I get enlightened just by having students. Hunter is the dopest college in the world. And I've taught at NYU as well. So I've had both perspectives, because kids come in, most of them are first generation college, working class, coming in, working at the same time. Some of them have children. The first time I saw a transgender person was in my classroom. Yeah. I've taught at least 3 transgender, students over the course of these years. And I remember when I had to change pronouns. I remember when class came back and the story had a pronoun that was that. I was like, what is this? It's he or she. And they were like, no, professor. And I was like, oh, gotta learn. Okay. Tell me why. Okay, I could do that. But where do you get that if you're not opening the doors for it?
And when I went to law school at night, it was all people single moms, cops. It was people that worked, that got hit by the financial crisis. All kinds of different people that were just working folks, all diverse of ages and backgrounds and thought. What I think you want in college classrooms or higher education classrooms are people that are hungry to learn. And generally, the people that are hungry to learn aren't the wealthy kids that had everything handed to them. That college is more of a social thing where they're going to network with other rich families so their mommies and daddies can have new rich family friends, and so that they can go on their own yacht parties and that they can help each other get hired when they get out of school. The network of higher education is a lot more valuable to those students than the education itself.
Yes. So my challenge is all of the other schools, especially the HBCUs, must become these networking opportunities. They must become on purpose, with focus. We're going to come here to network the way the Fab Five went to Michigan. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you go with a purpose, you and 4 of your friends, I remember, what was it called? The pact. 4 kids from Newark made a pact to go to medical school. And they all went to medical school. We had them on the show. We've had them on the show several times, a few of them. But 4 kids from the same neighborhood, same poor neighborhood in Newark, all ended up in medical school together because they came together with a vision. I'm saying it's going to make a lot of people do things that they wouldn't normally do because they assumed everything was, fair, and we have affirmative action. Now we got to think out of the box. And I'm here for that. I love it.
is through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you're lusting is the one